And we're back. The 928 series is fully underway. As promised, we're getting stuck in to our 1991 Porsche 928 S4. It is in beautiful condition, but we are doing a full mechanical refurbishment, really in the community known as a 25-year service, going through replacing all the rubber hoses, specifically in the fuel system, to make sure we don't have any risk of fire hazards, revamping the intake manifold. We're doing timing belts, water pumps, resealing the engine, so we have many years of enjoyment to come in the future. And this brings us to where we are today. So in the last video, we ripped off the intake manifold, the valve covers, and the supporting components, and we had shipped those off for refurbishment. And I think you guys saw at the end of the video, those parts are back. Now, this is a great step in the process. We have the majority of the things we need to put the car back together. However, today's video is not going to be focused on the intake valve covers. We are actually going to go underneath the car and start doing some work under there as part of this overall mechanical restoration. So I'm gonna raise the car up, we're gonna go underneath, and I'll show you what we're working on. All right, and we find ourselves under the front of the car, and as you can see, we have a rather oily oil pan. This thing's supposed to keep oil inside, and it seems to be doing a pretty good job of keeping it on the outside. And for just context here, I had actually cleaned a lot of this when I started the teardown, and you can see we just have oil everywhere. And from my research, this is a pretty common failure point on the 928s. In the end, this car is 35 years old, so it's unsurprising that the gasket is basically failing and needs to be replaced. But it is quite a big job. I know some of you guys might say, with all the work I'm doing, I probably should have pulled the motor out, but I thought, there's a lot of 928 owners that don't maybe have the lift and some of the other accessories in order to pull motors out of their car, and I thought I can show you how to service this with the engine in. It is quite a bit of work, but it'll also allow me to get under the car, get into all these components, and really degrease everything and inspect everything while we're going through. So it's a little bit more work for me, but I think it makes it honestly a little more approachable for other 928 owners out there. And just to show you guys, we kind of have oil around a lot of the hardware. We do also have an oil leak up here. This, from what I can tell, is a timing belt tensioner. As we're going to be doing the belt and the water pump, this will be addressed at that point in time. But we are going to be focused on the oil pan initially, getting that removed and cleaned, replacing the gasket. Again, you can kind of see up here, you see the oil and the hardware. So we're going to get this thing out. And again, as we come in the back here, it is super messy back here. We've had oil leaks for quite some time. And this was kind of my point. All this sludge here, all that can be cleaned off. We can use the parts washer, make sure we're good, and really give this thing a reseal while we're at it. Also, lurking up here is an engine mount, and it's a little hard to see, but these have cracks in them. And I thought, if we are gonna go to the extent of getting the pan out the way, we have perfect access to the engine mount. So I have a new set of motor mounts going in at the same time, so this thing will have the best shot at running as factory fresh as possible. And having done quite a few projects like this, I am sure there's going to be a few surprises as we go through this process. But my initial scope of this, and for today's video, is going to be start the process of stripping things down so we can get to the oil pan and get it removed, and then get access to those engine mounts. I am sure there's going to be some crush washers, O-rings, gaskets that we unearth as we go through this. They'll also need replacing as I do the project. We'll get those on order as we go through. but the goal is to have this thing leak-free and running factory fresh when it's back on the ground. And I thought maybe I'd give you guys a overall condition report on this thing. And honestly, for 35 years old, it's in really good shape. Yes, there's a few little dents on the frame rails because you're not supposed to jack it there, and over its life, I guess someone has. Unsurprisingly, we have a leaky transmission. We will get to that. But first, we're gonna focus on the front of the car and the motor, make sure it's nicely serviced and safe, and then we'll get on to some of the fun stuff back here at a later date. But overall, really nice shape. This car has spent most of its life in the South and in Florida and in a garage. And honestly, it really shows. Everything else we're dealing with here is just wear and tear over 35 years. So first call of action for me, and I don't know if this is necessarily required, but I just want to get it out the way. We're going to work on removing the sway bar in the front here. This will give us a little more room around this cross-member steering rack space. I see we obviously have the wires here for the starter. We're going to pull that out the way. And then we're going to start working our way up towards the motor mounts because I'm sure there's a nut or bolt on the top of each one that we have to undo. That may require lowering the car back down so that when we do drop all this subframe assembly down, we have the ability to just fall down and it's not attached to the motor. So anyway, let's get started with the front sway bar and then we'll come back. And I know the shop's still a bit of a mess, but man, this thing never gets old just having it right here. All right, well, we have this undone. Two 17 mil bolts here and equally right here. I had intended on disconnecting this from the end links. However, these were done up extremely tight. I admittedly put my impact on them and it still said no. So for now, we're gonna leave this. I do want to understand why that is, so I'll do some research. But we have the sway bar pulled down and away. And to give you a little better perspective from this side, we just have a little better access up here. You can really see how sludgy everything is on the supply lines to the starter. I think next up, I'm going to undo this so we can just pull all the cables out of the way. And then I think we'll make an assessment from there. But a little bit of progress. I know this is going to be slow going. And then we obviously have to get back up to the top of the motor, make sure that our engine lift bar is firmly in place before we start doing anything too crazy down here. All right, and you can see there's the little 10mm bolt we removed. Here is the cable for the starter right here. Definitely needs some cleaning. And then when we come up here, it is pretty gross. So yeah, definitely glad we're doing this. I am actually going to take this plate off under the steering rack. I'm not sure that you necessarily have to do it, but with as bad as the leak as I has been, I want to get this off so I can access everything and make sure it's all cleaned and degreased when we put it back. So I'm going to run through and undo all these bolts here, and then you will find me back here in a minute or two. Okay, well, you get the idea. This is what was on the other side of the steering rack bracket. All of this grease and grime, oil. These are all the things we want to clean. And then equally, we want to get all this hardware nicely degreased as well. Also, after removing this, I learned a little bit more about the car. So I thought I'd show you the steering rack that we're working with so you have an idea of some of the history. I did get quite a lot of documentation with the car, but you know, there's always little secrets hiding with them as you take them apart and you learn more and more about them. So I thought I'd share. And here we are. So the cover's removed. This is our steering rack. But as you can see right here, I know it's upside down, but this is a remanufactured rack. So this has been serviced at some point in its life and a new rack put in it. But you can see all the oil and grime that's built up in here. This is all the stuff we want to get rid of and get nice and clean and dry before we put it back together. All right, well, I started just pulling on the rack just to see how it came down. This side, no problem. Obviously, this is the driver's side. It's still attached to the steering wheel. So I decided to crack the lines on this and start draining the fluid. So this is just a 19 mil. I just cracked it. And conveniently, it decided to run down our starter wire. And into the catch pan. So I'm gonna let this drain out of the system. I'm gonna undo the other supply line or supply and return line so they're both disconnected. Then there's one bolt that basically locks this to the steering wheel. I'll pull that out and then we should be able to drop the rack all the way down and it will also be out of the way. Really what I'm doing is just layer by layer, getting closer to the subframe that goes across to see what we're working with, where that connects, what we need to do to disconnect it. And then once we have a plan with that, we'll probably lower the car down. Our lift bar is holding steady, and then we can do the exciting part and remove the cross member with the engine mounts. And that should give us full access to the oil pan and access to put the new motor mounts in as well. So with that, I'm gonna let this drain and we'll find me back here once we are getting the rack lowered all the way down. All right, guys, well, we have the rack pulled down. It is a nice long way out of the way. And the nice thing now, I realize, you can actually access the motor mounts from underneath. So I'm gonna do a little more investigating, but I have a suspicion if we undo these, then we fundamentally have the ability to raise the engine up. And when I say up, I just mean remove the load from the cross member. I know we are gonna have to get that thing out of the way in order for us to get the pan out, but at least if we can take that load off, then we know what we have to do is just focus on the cross member itself. We know the engine is nicely suspended and we can continue to chip away on that. All right, guys, well, we are back under the car. I've got a little better lighting. All right, so you can see here, I have undone the motor mount nut. I've done this on both sides. And here's the one on the driver's side. And what I didn't detail on camera, but you can probably see up there, the rods on the lift bar are threaded up a lot higher. I have taken the tension of the engine and just kind of elevated it slightly. All right, well, here is the passenger side motor mount. And it's a little hard to see, but there's a shadow now on the inside edge. That's from us taking the tension off of these mounts, which means that fundamentally the full load of the powertrain is no longer sitting on this mount. And here we are on the driver's side, and it's a little more apparent. You can see the gap here, and you can actually kind of see flashes of the metal underneath. Again, showing where we've actually lifted the engine just slightly off of this lower cross member. So with that done, I'm gonna get back under the car. There are quite a few more nuts and bolts that we have to undo in order to get the cross member out and snaked away from the steering rack and the oil pan, but there's no point talking about it. Let's get stuck in. I apologize for the not great lighting, guys. It is very cramped in here, but we can see the bolt right there. That is what we're gonna be tackling next. This one's on the passenger side. Access doesn't seem too terrible, but obviously we need to get on the other side to undo the nut. And let me take you over to the driver's side because that one's definitely a little more cramped. And here's the one lurking on the driver's side. So pretty tucked up there, but I'm confident we can get it out. So let me get a wrench on here. What I'll probably do, because it is quite cramped, I will try and get this set up and I will show you guys what worked for me for getting this out. So hopefully it can make your life a little easier if you're doing this job as well. All right, guys, well, this is the first one out on the passenger side. I ended up having to use a breaker bar to free this. I tried my impact and it just didn't seem to like it. But the old fashioned way with a breaker bar, we got this thing going. And then just honestly some hand tools and I was able to get this out and it slid out pretty easy. I did spray the threads with WD-40 just to get a little lubrication on there, but you can see this thing's a little beat up from trying different power tools. May see if I can replace this before we put it back, just so in case we have to do the service again, it's not too chewed up. Anyway, now on to the challenging one. And 25 minutes later, the other one is out. It was really finding the right combination of breaker bar and extensions to kind of crack this and get it going. And then just use the old-fashioned hand wrenches to get the nut undone. This bolt was a little tighter going through the cross member, so I had to kind of drift it out a little bit, but here it is. And just to show you guys, this is where we're at now. So this one on the passenger side is out, and lurking up here on the driver's side, this one is out too. And I will have to say, this is certainly starting to be one of the more involved cross members that I have had to remove. It's funny, on my 65 Mustang, there's literally one bolt on either side and the whole thing drops out. Anyway, next up, we're gonna go to the toe eyes that are on the front. We have to remove a few bolts there, so let me show you which ones those are. All right, so you find me at the front of the car. This is the front of the lower control arm. What we're gonna do, we're gonna undo these guys, pull this one out, loosen this one, and then we're actually gonna get going on these bolts. And the idea is we'll get these down and out. The toe eye will swing out the way, and this will actually remove the clamp on the front of the lower control arm. And I suspect as we progress, we'll be doing the same on the back of it as well. And let me jump over to the driver's side, show you what we're doing on that one as well. And here's the driver's side. So a little tucked up there, but exact same setup. Couple bolts here, couple bolts here. So we're gonna get those undone as well. All right, well, here's the hardware. These long guys are the front lower control arm bolts. It's interesting, the passenger side's a little corroded, which I find interesting. Not exactly sure why, but we'll get these all cleaned up or replaced when we put it back. And then this is the actual toe eye bolt. Let me take you up to the toe eyes and kind of show you what we're working with. And here we are. So this is the passenger side and it's just hanging. Like I mentioned, I left one bolt in and loose just so this can dangle down and out of the way. And then on the control arm, this is where the bolts would have been. So those are out right now as well. All right, well, unlike those upper bolts, that only took a few minutes. So I feel like we're moving right along. Next, we're gonna get the rear lower control arm bolts out. They also are 19 mil. So let me show you where those are, but we're gonna zip those out. And then I think that's kind of the control arm disconnected from the chassis and equally will give us the space to access the cross member. So here we are. Basically this guy here and this guy here. We need to take that out and then, yep, that's our control arm taken care of. So I'm gonna work on that on both sides. I don't imagine it taking very long. Access is nice and easy on these and they seem to be coming out of the frame, no issue. And here we are. So these are the 19 mils right here. Basically, as you undo that, the lower part of the bushing support just drops out the way. So kind of nice modular piece. And these are out of the way. So technically now the lower control arms are no longer attached to the car. All right, guys, well, the last step should be to remove this cross member bolt. This locates the cross member directly into the frame, kind of holds it in place, as well as obviously it being sandwiched by this control arm mount right here. So I saw this one on the driver's side and then I thought, let me go over to the passenger side and see where it is as well. So here we are on the passenger side, and it's interesting because I don't remember taking this out. So I did a little investigation. You can kind of see, but that looks worryingly like there's a snapped off bolt in there. So you've heard us say it before, but this is the classic fun with old cars moment. I think for me, I'm gonna have to get this cross member out, do a little more investigating, see what my options are to see if this is something that can be drilled out or what we can do to resolve this, but that's not exactly what I was hoping to find while going through this process. Anyway, in the meantime, I'm gonna get that one bolt out, and I think that should have the cross member technically detached from the car and the engine, and then we just have to figure out how on earth we get this out. All right, guys, well, precautionary measure. I know this is the bell housing. Remember, we have the chains holding the engine on the lift eyes as well. but I've put this 4x4 and 2x4 just under the bell housing as additional support, just so as we work on getting the cross member out, we have something fundamentally as a support piece at the back of the motor as well, so we're not just completely dependent on the chains at the front. So I think now I just need to work to cautiously remove the cross member. I think some of this will be kind of playing around with the lower control arms. There's a few things at play here that we need to mess with. And I think we'll be on our way to getting this thing out. And just to give you guys an idea, I've already come down a good inch. So things are working their way out. If we look up here with the cross member, same thing, we're dropped down about an inch as well. All right, well, we are back on the 928, and I have some updates for you today. And the big one here is the cross member is out and the motor mounts are out. Now, admittedly, I thought I had everything unbolted in the last piece of the video. I had everything undone from the cross member, but still things were getting caught up. And it took quite a bit of work to get this thing out. So I'm gonna jump back over to the motor here. I wanna show you what I did to get this out, because admittedly, I did not film it and trying to wrangle this thing out. I just got a little too focused on getting the job done, but want to take a step back and show you how we accomplished this. So I'm sure my 928 fans probably already know this. However, the motor mount design is a little unique compared to some of the other cars I have. And actually, as much as the motor mount sits up in this pocket, and we have the bolt in the cross member kind of in this area down here where my hand is, actually the top mount, the bracket goes up over the top and then back down and underneath on this side, and then it bolts up here and here and here and here, which is actually quite nice. You can access this all from under the car, and you can disconnect the motor mounts from the engine, all from the underneath. So once I figured this out, it was a little bit of an aha moment, and I did this on both sides, and we freed the whole cross member from the motor itself. That being said, the cross member still would not come out. And the reason for that is the lower control arm, the back bushing actually relies on the cross member as part of how it's mounted to the frame. And so the cross member was just sitting the upper portion of the lower control arms, and I had to basically pry the control arms forward to get enough room for the cross member to drop down. So it was quite a process, needed some help to do it, and by the time we were done, like you saw, we had the cross member out. We now have full access to the oil pan, which is half the reason that we're doing this. So next step, we're gonna get back under the car here. We've got to undo all the oil pan bolts. As I can see there's quite a lot. But with those out, we should be able to drop the oil pan down, and this will get us one step closer to the resealing process. We can equally take a look at the crank, check out the condition of the internals of the motor at the same time. And when I say all the bolts, I really mean it. We can just see the row of them going down here. Obviously the same on the other side over here. So I'm gonna be busy for a minute, getting all of these out of the way, but then we should be able to drop this pan down, and we'll be one step closer to getting this job done. All right, guys, well, that was a little bit of an adventure. Come to find out, I think I know why it was leaking. Literally all the bolts on the oil pan were loose. Quite a lot of them finger tight. I do not understand this. I don't know if this is age and heat cycling. As you can probably see in the time lapse, the pan itself was still bonded on with the gasket, even after I took all the hardware out. But yeah, not sure what to say, but they were all very, very loose. I'm sure with the aluminum, it's not supposed to be that tight, but like I said, a lot of these were finger tight. So I'm sure that is why we had the leak at the pan. But anyway, let me take you underneath, can kind of show you the bottom end, what we're working with, and yeah, next steps. And here you find the bottom of our 928 5-liter V8. and it is pretty clean in here. The oil color is kind of a dark green. It's because this thing has been running the VP Racing oil with the correct zinc in it. So that's kind of why everything is that green color under here. So previous owner really did look after this and did their best to maintain it as best as possible. But pretty cool. First time seeing one of these. It looks like we have kind of 4-bolt mains. It's pretty awesome. Definitely strong looking bottom end. And here's the oil pan itself. So again, you can kind of see the green tint in the oil. We're going to come through this, get it all cleaned out. Again, it's 35 years old. There is some buildup in here. It doesn't look terrible, but we want to get this all washed out as well. Make sure it's good to go for years to come. And this appears to be the factory cork gasket. I have a replacement one that we'll be putting on. And this little guy right here broke on me while I was trying to take this apart. It looks like an oil level sensor. So I'll do some investigating on what I need to do to make that right while we're going through this process. And now is a great time to shout out Roger at 928s Are Us. He has been a huge help to me for this project. Not only has he guided me through what I've needed to purchase to do the top end kit and overhaul, take care of the fuel system and make sure that's good to go for many years to come. He is a wealth of knowledge on these 928s as well. He helped me check the crank end plate to make sure the motor is good and worth saving before we went on this endeavor, and has been a huge resource already in this project. And also he has supplied me with all these awesome goodies. As you can see, here's his business right here. This is replacement fuel injectors when we get to it, but he has been a huge help in making sure that I do this right the first time. And he is also the reason for this fantastic, like new looking refurbished intake manifold and valve covers that I have for the car. So if anyone is going on one of these journeys on a 928, I highly recommend you reach out to Roger at 928s Are Us. Like I said, he's got all the parts, knows where to get them if he doesn't have them, and has a wealth of knowledge on these cars and really can guide you through what makes sense for your car to get it back to factory fresh. So thanks again, Roger. I'll put his contact info in the description below. Check his site out. Always give him a call. He can give you all the answers you need. All right, guys, well, it has been a couple days, and I've been chipping away at this in the evenings, just trying to clean as much as possible before we start the reassembly process. And as you guys might remember, we had quite a leak coming from the timing belt tensioner. So I've got a little rag up here. Obviously, there is no oil in the motor at this time, so really shouldn't be leaking anymore. But nonetheless, as I'm going through this expedition on cleaning, wanted to make sure that stopped dripping as well. And now if we take a peek up on the side of the block, it is looking a lot better. This was all caked in road grime because of some oil leaks that the car has had over time. And equally, if we kind of look up here behind the AC compressor, it's not perfect yet, but again, a lot cleaner than it was. That being said, there is a load of cleaning still to go, and I really want to get all this kind of grease and grime off of the motor before putting all the new parts back on. One, it will look so much better, but two, if I do get a leak in the future, it will be so much easier to diagnose. And what I'm finding is there's quite a few more days of cleaning that I need to do, and I do not want to delay this video coming out to you guys. And if I bring you back here, the oil pan is looking great. It's amazing how well this cleaned up. And we have the cross member that we were wrestling out. I have equally cleaned all the grease and grime off of this. It probably needs one more going over, but again, it is nice and dry and clean. The same goes for these little heat shields here that mount to the cross member, and this rubber mount that goes between the cross member and the motor. And here are the motor mounts, and honestly, upon inspection, they do not look as bad as I first thought, but as we were doing this service for the oil pan gasket, it is the time to change them out. So let me throw those in the spare parts bin just in case, but we have these brand new ones right here that will be going in. And now is a great time to say thanks for all the support on the last video. I got a tremendous amount of views and a bunch of new subscribers interested in the 928, and I want to make sure that I keep progress updates coming on this consistently. And that is why we are going to wrap today's video here. And to give you guys an idea of what the other side looks like and what we started with before cleaning, this is the driver's side. And admittedly, this one is not as bad as the other side was, but you can see road grime from sticking to the oil. And as we look up further on the block, it's not terrible, but there's plenty of stuff to be cleaned off before we put all the new gaskets and pan back on. And equally, a bit more as well right here. And I've already spent a good 20 or 30 minutes cleaning this. And the more I unravel it, the more surprises it has. That we've got to get all the oil and grime off of these as well. So thank you to all my new subscribers that joined because of the 928 content. I am super excited that this project is now underway. And equally, huge shout out to my long-term followers that have come along this journey doing all the different cars in the shop. So I'm going to continue the cleaning behind the scenes, and we'll jump back next week where we're getting the oil pan installed, the motor mounts, and buttoning up the underside so we can start moving forward to do the timing belt, water pump, and much, much more. So thank you all for watching. If you are new to the channel, please hit that subscribe button. It really helps me out. As you can see, I am extremely close to 10,000 subscribers, which is a huge milestone for me. Also, please check out Roger's website. He has tons of useful information on maintaining these cars. He is a wealth of knowledge as well as a wealth of parts. And for anyone interested in all these cars in the background, don't you worry, there's plenty of content coming on these very, very soon. So I'm gonna get back to my cleaning, and I'll see you guys on the next episode.